Okay, good afternoon. So a crucial topic to recap today. We're going to be focusing on local and global variables, how to use them, what the differences are, and how that affects our code. We need to be able to give a definition and talk about the implications of both terms and know when it's appropriate, when it's good, when it's bad, when it's avoidable, when it's beneficial to use or avoid both. So here we have some arguments, some parameters, some global variables, and some local variables. So yeah, P1 and P2 are both parameters because they're defined in the definition of a subprogram. So num1 and num2 are both global variables. They are defined outside of the scope of any subprograms. They are global variables. So here, num1 and num2 are both global variables, but they are passed in as arguments on line 7. What does that mean? It means the value of num1, 9, is passed in as an argument into adder. What does that mean? It means when you call adder, the parameter P1 is set to the value of the argument, num1, which was 9. So P1, for the scope of this subprogram, stores 9. P2, the parameter, stores 4, because the argument passed in, num2, stores 4. The parameters on line 5 are treated like local variables. So let's switch out to our document, and you can fill this out. Activity 1. What do we know about local variables and global variables? Well, local variables are only accessible within the scope of a subprogram. What do I mean by a subprogram? I mean a procedure or a function. So that means you might have an additional variable in here called thing, and you might say thing equals 3. You could only access that within the scope of adder, which is a subprogram. We know here that adder is a function because it returns a value. What value does it return? It returns the sum of these two parameters. Parameters are treated like local variables in that they store a value whilst the subprogram runs. So there's actually quite a lot to put in here. A global variable can be accessed anywhere in the program, but we need to go beyond that. Memory is allocated for a global variable when the program starts. When is that memory freed up? Only when the program quits. That means if you've got a global variable, you're wasting or using the memory for the whole duration, the whole lifetime of the program. A local variable, however, you allocate memory for it when you call that subprogram. The memory used for those parameters or local variables is freed up when you finish that procedure or function. The big advantage of local variables is you can have multiple subprograms that have local variables with the same names, but because they're in a different scope, they mean different things. And the example that I always give here is target grades. What do I mean by this? Well, if you have a definition for maths that returns your target grade, at the moment, when you go to a maths lesson, which is calling maths, it doesn't know what target grade is. Well, every teacher knows what your target grade is. Hopefully you know what your target grade is. Here we have a local variable set to 9, and it returns that local variable so that we can do something with it. What are we going to do with it? We can print it or assign it somewhere else. However, if we have another subject, you can have, oops, it's ironic, isn't it? Misspelling English. You can have a local variable with the same name with a different value. Here, I'm returning my target grade for maths, but here, I'm returning my target grade for English. They've both got the same name, but in a different scope. That is a big advantage of a local variable because you can adjust this, you can copy and paste it into a different program, and it's not going to interfere with anything else. It only exists within the scope of that program. What does that mean? It means as soon as you call maths, we allocate memory for the target grade. As soon as you step outside of your maths lesson, you forget what your target grade is, unless you've returned it and stored it or used it somewhere else. Okay. Let's have a look at the code. Identify 2 global variables and 2 local variables. You can do this by yourself. So for activity 2, you've got some code here, but remember you can't have create with code in an exam because it's online. We need to be able to use Moo or Thonny, and I much prefer Thonny, even though Moo looks friendlier. So I'm going to copy and paste the code in here. Remember, the very first thing that you do at the start of each question is save it as like Q01 finished rather than Q01 student. Then it's saying, can you add a breakpoint on line 50? Well, let's run the whole thing first and see what happens. F5, here we go. Let's have an even number. We get 90, an odd number, and we get 39. Either will do, and exit the program. Nice. How do we add a breakpoint? Well, we double click on the line number. Double click on here, we get a red blob. If we press run, it still runs the whole program. What we need to do is debug. So run and debug is Control and F5. That means when it gets to that line, it will pause. Look at the variables in the variable watch window. Screenshot the variable watch window and paste it here. Now, we can see that over here. If we'd accidentally deleted it, we can bring it back with window and variables. But this is showing the contents of each global variable. That's the screenshot that we need. So here's the reminder of what debugging actually means. When you do run and debug, it will run until it gets to a breakpoint, or you can step over, that means run one line at a time, keyboard shortcut F6. So notice it has not run line 10 yet. There is no global variable called number. I'm going to press F6. Now it has done line 10, and we have a global variable called number. I'm going to step over the definition of show menu. We're not calling get user choice, we're defining it. We're not calling gen number, we're defining it. We do that in one go. This time I'm not going to press F6. I'm going to press step into F7. If I did press F6, it would move on to line 51. But I'm going to press F7, step into, which means we have to actually run show menu. How do we show menu? Well, look, we have a whole extra window now. And at this point, we can run a line at a time until we're there. This time, more interestingly, I'm going to press F7 to go inside get user choice. Here we go. And you should be able to see all of the local variables inside. But I pressed F6 instead of F7, so let's try again. I'm running until I get to the breakpoint. I'm pressing F7. Here we go. I'm inside get user choice. And this time, when I press F6, I should be able to see a variable called choice, but I can't because it's not there. So how can we see the local variables? So here we go. We have global variables over here, but we've also, for this subprogram, we've got a set of local variables. Choice is currently set to an empty string. I'm going to press F6 to run that whole line. Type in a choice. There we go. And choice is currently set to 1. This time, rather than running the whole line at a time, I'm going to press F7. And it will take a complex Boolean expression and narrow it down. It'll do a bracket at a time. Well, what is choice? Choice is 1. Is 1 less than 1? Well, no. Is choice greater than 4? Well, no. So is false or false? Well, no, because we haven't got either. So all of that is false. So therefore, this didn't run because it was a valid choice. That stepping over is really helpful for debugging. That's what this whole lesson is all about. Okay. I want you to work through, take the screenshots, work through at your own pace. Do as much as you can. Give me a shout if you need any help. We've had a request for some help with 3D. So let's set a breakpoint on line 23. How do we do that? We double click on line 23 in there. Resume the execution until the next breakpoint. I'm going to plop that on here so we can see both at the same time. Run and run nicer. So now we've got a breakpoint at line 23. The only thing I don't like about Thonny is that it doesn't show that this is line 23 anymore. It's a bit irritating. So check the variable watch window. You should still see the same variables. Well, yes, we do. Look, we see all of these. And I'm going to dock that. We can still see the same global variables. But we should also see that we have some local variables. No variables have been made yet. Look, we don't have any local variables yet. However, single step your debugger to line 25. How? Run, step over. We're on line 25. We're up here. I wish there was a way to get line numbers on here. Maybe there is. Don't know. I'll have to find that out. But anyway, we're here. Check the variable watch window and we'll see that we've got choice. Yes, we do. There it is. Screenshot the watch window and paste it here. So I want a screenshot of that. It's basically showing that can you use an integrated development environment, can you use an IDE to show the contents of global variables and local variables. So let's go through 3E together. It says set a breakpoint on line 29. Now it's worth noting, I've never seen any paper 2 questions that force you to put breakpoints on. You don't need to know how to do this, but it's exceptionally helpful when you're debugging your own programs. So let's find line 29. Double click. I'm just going to take off previous breakpoints. And then it says resume execution until the next breakpoint. What does that mean? It means run it until it gets to that point. So make a choice from the menu. Well, the program won't hit that breakpoint until after input is finished. So I'm going to try number 7. It still hasn't hit the breakpoint because we're inside this while loop because choice is greater than 4. Let's go for 3. And at this point, it has hit the breakpoint. Why? Because we've got choice and we're returning choice. So where were we on here? You will need to enter a number from the menu. Choose the number 1. Oops, I chose 3. Let's try again. Run, debug. Choose the number 1. Enter. Note, if you can't see your console, look around in your IDE for a tab that says console. Well, it's down here. When your program stops in line 29, notice that the value of the local variable choice is now 1. What does that mean? Well, you've got a screenshot the fact that the local variable choice currently stores 1. That's the screenshot that you want. Insert screenshot, screen clipping, plop that in here. There we go. Let's move on to F. Single step using your debugger over line 29, the return statement. So single step, that means run, step over. So what happens here? Well, you should have stopped at line 51. We have. Check the variable watch window. You should still see the same variables, but we haven't got choice anymore. We've only got global variables. Well, we would have if I hadn't closed them. There we go. There's no choice here. Choice was a local variable that only exists within the scope of that subprogram. We're not in that subprogram anymore, so therefore we can't see choice. But what we can see is the choice. The choice is currently set to 5 because it was set to 5 at the beginning. However, it says notice the value of the choice has not yet been set to 1 as returned by get the user choice. So what does that mean? It means when we ran this, I typed in 3. 3 was stored in choice. That choice value is going to be returned, but it hasn't been assigned yet because I haven't run line 5. But as soon as I press F6 to run that line, we have now assigned the choice. It was set to 5. It's now set to 1. Great. Single step over line 51. Look what we've done. The choice is now changed. Screenshot the variable watch window. What do I mean by that? I mean that. It's all about checking to see if you can F6 or F7, step over or step into, run the code one line at a time, seeing how variables change. It really, really helps you understand how Python programs work if you're able to do this. Stop and clean up from this activity. It just means stop and get rid of all breakpoints, double clicking. There we go. That's what we've got to do.